Have you ever stopped to think that even when you truly want the best for your children, you might be saying things that hold them back instead of helping them grow? I'm not talking about yelling or obvious insults. I'm talking about phrases that sound sincere, even loving, but leave a quiet mark when they're repeated year after year. Phrases born out of pain, exhaustion, or fear, often spoken at the very moment when staying silent hurts the most. If you're the parent of an adult child, you probably carry a complex mix of pride, concern, and a guilt you don't always know where it comes from. Sometimes it feels like you gave everything you had, that you have nothing left to give, and yet something still feels off. This video is an invitation to honestly look at the words that come out when the bond feels strained, to understand why certain truths should never be spoken, and how Stoicism can help you let go without breaking, love without controlling, and regain inner peace without losing the connection. I'm Gabriel. I've spent many years studying and practicing Stoicism as it applies to real life, and I'm also a father. On this channel, we reflect together on boundaries, emotional dignity, and relationships in maturity. If this space resonates with you, I invite you to subscribe. Today we're going to walk through 5 truths you should never say to your adult child, and I promise the last one can completely change how you understand parental love at this stage of life. Stay until the end. Have you ever felt that after everything you've done, your adult child should behave differently toward you? This first point is uncomfortable because it touches a deep wound. Sacrifice. When we say, directly or indirectly, that a child owes us their life, the message that lands isn't gratitude, it's burden. And a burden doesn't unite, it weighs down. No matter how true it may feel, from your exhaustion or personal history, this phrase opens a silent crack in the relationship. I want you to notice something calmly. Raising a child is not a contract. It's not an investment waiting for a return. It's a responsibility freely chosen. Marcus Aurelius said that what is right should be done because it is right, not for the reward. When we remind an adult child that we gave them everything, that we sacrificed, that we gave things up for them, without realizing it, we are collecting on a debt that never should have existed. And no one can live in peace feeling that their very existence is an unpaid bill. Many parents say this not out of cruelty, but out of emotional exhaustion, because they feel they gave more than they received. But there is a very subtle psychological trap here. When you tell your child they owe you their life, you place them in a permanently childish position. You bind them to guilt and at the same time take away their ability to relate to you as a free adult. They don't choose you, they repay you, and that destroys mutual respect, even if it doesn't show right away. From psychology, we know that sustained guilt leads to 2 possible responses: resentful submission or cold distance. Neither builds a healthy bond. The child who stays out of guilt does not love freely, and the one who leaves often does so, carrying an invisible weight that follows them for years. Was that the goal of the sacrifice? To create a bond or an emotional debt? In this first point, I want you to understand something essential. True love does not collect. Adult love does not keep score. Strong love lets go. When you give up telling your child that they owe you their life, you don't lose authority, you gain dignity. And paradoxically, that is where many children begin to come closer by choice, not obligation. With this clear, we can move on to something even more delicate. Point number 2 of this talk: never tell them that they disappointed you as a child. There is a phrase many parents say, believing they are being honest, mature, or even instructive, when in reality they are leaving a deep wound. Telling an adult child that they disappointed you is not a neutral opinion. It is a judgment that strikes directly at identity. It doesn't speak about a specific behavior, it speaks about who that person is in your eyes. and coming from a parental figure that carries far more weight than you might imagine. I want us to make an important distinction from the start. I'm not talking about pointing out a concrete mistake or expressing disagreement with a specific decision. That is part of any adult relationship. I'm talking about that morally charged phrase, full of expectation and quiet superiority, that essentially says, "You're not living up to what I expected of you." When that is said even once, something breaks in the child's inner world. Psychology shows us that parental disappointment is not processed as external criticism, but as a flaw of the self. The child doesn't hear, "I didn't like what you did." They hear, "There is something wrong with me." And once that idea takes root, two paths usually appear. Either they try to live to regain an approval that never fully comes, or they emotionally distance themselves to avoid feeling inadequate again. In both cases, the bond becomes tense, conditional, or cold. Stoicism offers us an uncomfortable but liberating clarity here. Epictetus insisted that we have no right to demand that others live according to our expectations. Expectations belong to us, not to the world. When a parent feels disappointed because their child didn't choose the expected path, the child hasn't failed. An unchecked expectation has collided with reality. Turning that frustration into a verdict about the other person is deeply unfair. Many parents say this phrase out of pain, not out of cruelty. It hurts to see a child make choices you don't understand, don't share, or that scare you. But there is a huge difference between saying, "I'm worried about what you're doing," and saying, "You disappointed me." The first opens dialogue. The second closes the heart. One invites reflection, the other installs shame. Here is a hard but necessary truth for parental maturity. Your adult child did not come into this world to fulfill your life project. They came to live their own. They may make mistakes, take detours, even fail in your eyes, and still remain worthy of respect. When you give up telling them that they disappointed you, you are not giving up your values. You are giving up using love as a tool of pressure. This point is crucial because it marks a shift in focus. We move from talking about the past and sacrifice to talking about judgment and expectation. And with this clear, we can move into even more delicate territory where love often disguises itself as protection but ends up weakening what it claims to care for. Telling them they can't do it without you. There is a statement many parents make, convinced they are protecting, when in reality they are weakening. Telling an adult child that they can't manage without you, that they wouldn't know what to do on their own, that the world will swallow them if you're not there, is not preventive love, it's fear disguised as care. And fear, when passed on this way, doesn't shelter, it shrinks. Let's look at this honestly. When you tell your adult child that they're not ready, that they're not capable, that without your guidance, they will make mistakes, the message that lands is not, "I care about you," it's, "I don't trust you." Even if you say it gently, even if you repeat it as a loving warning, at its core, you're planting doubt about their own competence, and someone who doubts themselves becomes either dependent or rebellious, but rarely grows in calm confidence. Developmental psychology shows us that autonomy doesn't appear on its own, it is enabled. And it's enabled when reference figures transmit trust, not constant alarm. An adult child needs to feel they can make mistakes without losing your respect, that they can fall without it proving that you were right all along. When a parent insists that the other can't handle things, they don't protect them from error, they deprive them of learning. Here, Stoicism is once again uncomfortably clear. Marcus Aurelius reminded us that each person must carry their share of fate. Intervening beyond what is necessary is not virtue, it's interference. Excessive help steals dignity. And when you help to soothe your own anxiety, the other person pays the price with insecurity. Ask yourself honestly whether you are caring for your child or protecting yourself from the fear of losing your role. Many parents fear a truth that is rarely said out loud. If my child can stand on their own, maybe they no longer need me the way they once did. And that thought hurts. But confusing need with love is a costly mistake. Mature love does not need to be indispensable. It offers itself as presence, not as a crutch. It stays close without invading. It observes without directing every step. Before we continue, let me pause briefly with you. If this content is helping you rethink your role as a parent at this stage of life, I invite you to subscribe to this channel. If you feel like it, leave your name and the country you're listening from in the comments. I always read them, and this space is built with real people, not numbers. That said, let's return to the topic. Giving up telling your adult child that they can't do it without you doesn't mean abandoning them. It means trusting them. It means looking them in the eyes and saying, even silently, I believe in your ability to face life, even when I don't agree with your decisions. That trust, even if it creates some distance at first, builds a stronger, cleaner, and freer bond in the long run. And with this clarity, we're ready to move on to another deeply painful point. Never tell them how they should live their life. There is a very fine line between supporting and directing, between advising and controlling. And many parents cross it without realizing it when they tell their adult child how they should live, what decisions to make, who to be with, when to change, when to stay. It's not always done with bad intentions. In fact, it's almost always done out of love. But the effect doesn't depend on intention, it depends on impact. I want you to look at this calmly. When an adult child constantly hears unsolicited opinions about their work, their partner, their parenting, their money, or their lifestyle, the message they receive is not guidance, it's distrust. It's as if you were telling them, without saying it, that their judgment is not enough. And when that repeats itself, the relationship fills with tension, even if on the surface everything seems fine. Psychology shows us that adult autonomy weakens when the parental figure continues to occupy the role of life director. The child may react in two ways. Either they submit, shut down their own judgment, and live seeking approval, or they defend themselves with distance, silence, or hardness. In both cases, the relationship loses its naturalness. There is no longer meeting, there is friction. Stoicism is especially clear here. Epictetus taught that each person must govern their own life and accept the consequences of their choices. Constantly interfering in another's decisions is not virtue, it is arrogance disguised as concern. Not because the parent doesn't know, but because learning cannot be transferred by imposition. It is built through experience. Many parents feel fear when they stop giving opinions. They fear becoming irrelevant. They fear the child will make mistakes. They fear not being heard. But there is a powerful paradox that almost no one explains. When you stop telling your adult child how they have to live, your words begin to carry more weight when they truly matter. Because they stop being constant noise and become a respected presence. Setting limits on your need to opine is not a lack of love, it is respect. It is recognizing that your child no longer needs a permanent guide, but an adult in front of them who trusts their judgment, even when they doesn't share it. And that trust, even if it creates some silence at first, builds a more honest, more relaxed, and more dignified bond for both. With this point, the script enters its final stretch. Because when a parent manages to let go of control, the deepest fear of all appears. The fear of being left behind. And that is where the last phrase you should never say to an adult child emerges, even if inside it hurts more than you want to admit. Never tell them that they are abandoning you. Imagine this scene for a moment. Your child doesn't call like they used to. They don't spend as much time with you. They have their own life, their own schedule, their own priorities. You find yourself staring at the phone, replaying memories, wondering when everything changed. And from that place of loneliness, a phrase rises that burns inside before it ever leaves your mouth. You're abandoning me. It doesn't come from reason. It comes from fear. Let's stay there for a moment without judgment. Because this point isn't about accusing parents, it's about understanding a very real pain. The problem isn't feeling it. The problem is turning that pain into a message your child cannot receive without carrying enormous guilt. When you say they're abandoning you, you're not describing their behavior, you're handing them your anguish and asking them to manage it for you. There is a confusion here that quietly destroys many relationships, confusing distance with abandonment. An adult child who differentiates, builds their own life, and no longer revolves around their parents is not breaking the bond. They are fulfilling a natural process. Abandonment implies indifference, contempt, or cruelty. Independence does not. Mixing the two is unfair and deeply disorienting for the other person. Now I want you to notice the effect this phrase has on the other side. The child hears that their growth causes harm, that living their own life creates pain, that moving forward means making you suffer. Faced with that, there are only two possible exits. Either they stay but live only halfway, trapped between loyalty and resentment, or they leave, carrying a guilt that does not belong to them. Neither builds love. Stoicism doesn't offer easy comfort here, it offers truth. Everything we love is temporary. Marcus Aurelius said it with calm bluntness. We don't own anyone, we only share time for a while. Resisting that natural movement doesn't stop loss, it only makes it more bitter. When you accuse someone of abandonment, you're fighting time, not your child. And there is something even more honest we need to say. Often, it's not that the child leaving hurts the most. What hurts is being left alone with a life that revolved too long around that role. It hurts to face a stage where meaning, connections, and identity must be rebuilt. But that work is internal. It cannot be done at the expense of another person's freedom. The day you stop telling your adult child that they are abandoning you, something profound happens. You reclaim your emotional dignity. You stop asking for company from a wound and begin offering presence from strength. And when a child feels they can leave without guilt, many times they choose to return without obligation. This final point doesn't end with a warning, it ends with a possibility. Loving in maturity is not about holding on. It's about blessing the other's path, even when it sometimes moves away from yours. And that may be the highest and most difficult form of parental love. Now that we've reached this point, it's worth pausing for a moment and calmly looking back at the path we've walked. We've talked about not burdening an adult child with emotional debts, not judging their worth through disappointment, not weakening them by saying they can't manage on their own, not invading their life with constant opinions, and finally, not confusing their growth with abandonment. Not as rigid rules, but as warnings born from experience and from a deep desire for healthier relationships at this stage of life. If there is one thing that connects all these points, it is the same root: fear. Fear of losing the role, fear of being left alone, fear that love may no longer be needed. Stoicism reminds us that it's not about eliminating fear, but about not obeying it blindly. Because when we act from fear, even with good intentions, we often say words that bind, that guilt, or that wound, and then we wonder why the other person pulls away. I truly want to thank you for staying until the end. This channel exists to accompany mature people who seek clarity, emotional dignity, and inner peace in the midst of complex relationships. I don't speak from pure theory. I speak as someone who has also had to review the way I love, the way I let go, and the way I stay silent when silence is wiser than words. If this video resonated with you, I invite you to leave a simple but powerful phrase in the comments. Loving also means letting go. Reading them lets me know that we are not alone in this process and that many of us are learning, sometimes late, but with honesty. Thank you for sharing this time with me. We'll keep meeting on this channel to reflect together, without rush, with steadiness, and with humanity. Until next time.